one question in 4 parts. We'll get to that in a little bit. And that's what this is all about, is getting people out to vote for that, hopefully to support, and being able to show to Congress that we have a lot of support in DC for this effort. That DC residents demand statehood is essentially the goal here. And the point of that is we take all of the information that we have, everything from the referendum, and present it to Congress and the new president and say, DC is ready for statehood, the people demand statehood, there's no reason not to give it to us, now pass the act and make us a state. So the November ballot question, as I said, is going to be one question with 4 parts. So you'll be able to see when the Board of Elections actually publishes what the question is going to look like. But essentially, it will have these 4 questions. Do you want to become the 51st state? Because the residents of the area need to show a desire to become a state. Do you approve the state constitution, which we are printing new copies of it now. They are still at the printer, so as soon as we have those, we will have lots of copies for you and for you to hand out to people. But we pay more federal taxes per state than any other state in the country. We pay $38,000 per person about. The next highest state is Delaware, who pays about $24,000, and the next state after that pays about $19,000 a person. So we pay double the 3rd highest per capita state, and we have 0 votes in Congress. We pay more total federal taxes than 22 states in 2014. Some of those states are about as large as we are, less than 1 million, but a lot of them have more than 1 million people. A lot of them have more than double the population of DC, but pay less in total federal taxes than DC does. Residents serve in the military, they serve on federal juries, they are full US citizens in every aspect except representation in Congress. And DC is ready because they're in a strong financial position. We've had 21 consecutive budgets, and have a $13 billion budget in FY16 that is raised almost entirely from local taxes and fees. DC's population is larger than the states of Vermont and Wyoming. There is no minimum land size to become a state, so just because we are a city-state, as it were, does not prevent us from becoming a state. The Congress can admit states by act. All they have to do is pass an act by majority vote, and they can make us a state. This continues to be an ongoing civil rights violation, as I said, 15 years, full of people, with the city full of people not able to vote. And it's civil and voting. So when you're going out to present statehood, you have to think about the reasons why it's important to you talking. So if I care about all the specifics and I'm going out to talk to a group of college students, they might not care about the federal taxes quite the same way that I do. They might care more about the ideals, about, they're in college and they're really engaged with American history and they care about taxation, representation as an American ideal. So you need to think both about what's going to make you talk passionately and what's going to make your audience receptive to the points that we're making. You also need to speak in a style that works for you. Maybe you're great at standing up and speaking off the cuff for 25 minutes. Maybe you are a terrible public speaker and you hate presentations and you hate giving PDFs. So then one yes, no checkbox. Okay. So they only have to check yes once. Yes?
In Southwest DC, there's a variety of opposition from a variety of people, all kinds of people, races, religions, and as I said, a variety of, why do we have to? And one of the things that pops up more than the others, a little bit, is don't you have representation in the person of Eleanor Holmes Norton? And my question is there material easily accessible that defines in detail Ms. Norton's role and power?
There may be, I don't think we have anything specifically one-pager style. But I mean, the quick answer there is yes, Eleanor Holmes Norton is our representative, but she has no vote. And we still have no senators.
Vote in the committee, that's right, and
right.
all that.
But not on the floor.
Not on the floor, yeah.
Right, and
she's a delegate.
if that's the only detail that's important, I know that one already.
Right.
But
That's the big one.
that's a big one, and maybe there ought to be some elaboration someplace.
Well, we don't have senators, and senators are the way your district gets money. The representatives are not the people that can get your district money.
See what I mean?
Yeah, I think the senators point is the biggest one. That's the place where every state gets their equal say, is in the Senate, and that's more so than anything where we lose out on the conversation, because it's not just money, but it's also, you lose out on national conversations. So Supreme Court justice confirmations, no senators there,
But from the
filibusters,
same
those
way,
things.
I'd like there to be some material, maybe somebody in a hurry will say, oh, there's more to it than what you just said, Gene. Where can I find out? Or, you know, I can flip something out of my pocket, or I can refer to a website.
Okay, there are a number of websites that have a lot of information on the subject of DC's lack of power. Go to the statehood.dc.gov website. We're still continuing to update that and load information. I know if you go to the DC Vote website, that there's information, I think, stand up, and your website, what's that? freedc.org. There, so these are
NewColumbiaVision.org also?
Right, so there are a number of websites that where information, you don't have to go far. If you go on the first page, you should be able to pull out a few points. But I think that there are just so many compelling stories around the table and how you start and engage people. I'm just going to start with the quick one. How many people are from Washington, D.C.?
You mean born and raised?
Okay, we'll be how many people are not from Washington, D.C.? Okay, so that's a clear story right there. In your state, you had a member of Congress and 2 senators. You had access to people who make decisions that define your life. And here in Washington, and you moved here to Washington, D.C., and you didn't have that anymore. And, you know, we talk about equality, the history of equality and the battles for equality were about, you know, race, and then they were about gender. We thought we moved past some of these battles, but, you know, we're being discriminated on just based on where we live. And so I think there's a lot of stories and a lot of rationale that you could pull from where you're from and why you're here and some of the issues that you encounter. Nick talked about some issues, you know, kind of tangentially, but they're in terms of the riders. But for example, if you're a woman, you're in Washington, D.C., Congress has reared its ugly head in terms of riders on a woman's right to choose. A number of years ago, the residents of the District of Columbia voted for one for medical marijuana and then for a marijuana, like other states have in Colorado and other states. Congress has said, no, you can't do that. So Congress weighs in, but they don't weigh in on other states that that's wrong. So there are a lot of issues. The issue of guns. You know, we know it's a Second Amendment right, but we've had a certain way of looking at guns here in Washington, D.C. And Congress has come in and tried to force rules down our throats that said that maybe anybody from anywhere can have a gun and they can carry, they can use any caliber. So from time to time, Congress, not from time to time, consistently, Congress has weighed in. I think the thing that, one of the questions that I get from time to time, well, you know, statehood sounds hard. Shouldn't we try, you know, budget autonomy or legislative autonomy or vote in the House or 2 senators or all these various pieces? Well, you know what? We've tried all those things, but it is statehood is the one thing that confers full citizenship on you, on par with all other states.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to self-determination, right? And I think this is the, I think that to reach people on the subject, you gotta go to their emotions. I don't think anything gets people more excited than basic rights as a citizen. And I just for a simple thing, I want to fly with my pet the other day, and I have to go all the way to Richmond, Virginia, because that's the only nearby state. That doesn't make sense. I'm one of those people who pays taxes, more federal taxes than most people in the U.S. And I still don't have a congressman that I can call or a senator, or even a state medical person to sign off on my pet flying with me. So I think if you speak to self-determination, basic rights as a citizen, and wanting to be like the rest of the Americans in this country, then people will connect to that. I think more so than numbers.
I'm concerned about the referendum that's going to be out in November. Do we have a clear, is the path to statehood on this sheet, pass it on, is that the 4 things that will be on the ballot? Because I would, for a senior citizen going to the polls, they're going to, go to the polls, vote for their little people that they like and so forth and so on. And then they want to see the word statehood. It appears that these four, things that you selected really don't say statehood. So why is it that we're doing all of these four that they have to read and they're not gonna stand there and read them? Versus just saying, do you vote for statehood? Would you want statehood or not? Period. So that they can see statehood, STATEHOOD, and then say, oh yeah, we want that.
Okay, well, Ms. Paul, I think that's a good question, and that's being worked on right now. The actual language that will be on the ballot has not been found finalized.
Okay.
In fact, the Board of Elections will consider this in about the first week and a half of September. And once the Board of Elections certifies the language which came from a request from the DC Council, I'm almost sure, the shaping of that language is somewhat collaborative. The language will be clear, I believe that, well, I can't say what Board of Elections will say in the language, but it's my understanding that, it will probably be as clear as possible and spell out what it is that we are looking for.
Well, just keep in mind that voters, we run into the poll and we run out. And if you put statehood in this referendum somewhere, and it should be at the top, then people will say, oh, check, and go
So
on.
it's your job as people who talk to people, Nick mentioned earlier, what is the ask? What is the ask that you want people to do, to consider? You want to say, well, think about all the four things. It's really a binary equation, right? It's either a yes or a no. So what is it that you want people to do?
Yes.
Yeah, we're following another
That's-
state's
and then you have four-
formula, right? Are we following another Tennessee? Was it?
Tennessee plan,
And
yeah.
I believe the 4 points were what Tennessee used in order to become a state, and for that reason, if we pass that litmus test where the citizens vote on these 4 items, then we've done exactly what Tennessee did to become a state. And I think that's perhaps why those 4 items are in there.
Just
to kind of
to let you know
confirm.
that the referendum resolution passed by the council, the title is Advisory Referendum on the State of New Columbia Admission Act. And the language that they passed in the resolution, which, again, that's up to the Board of Elections, what will go on the ballot itself. The way the first item is worded is, do you agree that the district should be admitted to the union as the State of New Columbia?
As a
That
what?
exact line, as the State of New Columbia.
So
So
that
that,
doesn't say state.
Would you
Okay.
say that?
it's the,
All I'm saying
so
is I know.
the first one that equates to is both their support for statehood. So essentially, that's you saying, yes, we want to be a state of the,
With regards to the training, are all 4 of them same as this one, just different people, or is there a different program?
going to be the same.
So one,
And I think
Say
that
the-
we're
say the
probably
other
gonna,
one, because I want to make sure. See, when I go out and talk to people and they ask me, well, what is Tennessee playing? I may not like Tennessee, period. So, when you have those, we should probably also have a little bit of information on each of these things so that we could, if someone should ask those questions, we could articulate that quickly and move forward.
Sure, so just to run through, the 4 things are, do you want to become the 51st state? Do you agree?
what's the answer to that?
yeah.
Okay, well, that's the most important question.
Do you approve the Constitution? Do you agree to the boundaries, and do you commit to a representative form of government?
One person said, where's the Constitution?
It's available online, and when the new printing happens with the updates from the commission, we will have copies at public libraries like they did with the old version.
But isn't the council holding hearings on that draft constitution in September? So it's not absolutely final yet?
That is correct. The
I
council
know
still
there are
has a
people
little
who are
work to
concerned
do.
about provisions in the Constitution, and they're gonna make comments to the council. The council's gonna make some changes, but we're not gonna know what the Constitution is until very close to the election, really.
And that's true. I think that there'll be an additional opportunity to interface with members of the council on what their intent is. I think the good news is with the New Columbia Statehood Commission that the co-chair of the commission is the chairman of the council. He is, I believe, all along been fielding the request and listening to his colleagues about the document they put forward from the New Columbia State Commission to the council. I don't anticipate any radical or any signature changes from that document. There may be some tweaking. I can't speak for the council, but I know that the chairman has been embedded in the process, and the council is relying on him for the best read.
Gene, but you did say, in answer to the lady, that there's a good possibility for the ballot language to change to become 3 points or 2 points instead of the 4, to make a yes or no easier to come by?
The referendum, what the language on the ballot will be 4 questions.
The thing
One
that is
question
not settled is
per
how they will be worded. You know, I think that what the Board of Elections will be looking at is language that is clear. So they're not gonna try to talk in lawyer language with long and multi-syllable words. They're gonna try to simplify the language so that people understand it. And I believe they'll also be looking at a certain word count. You know, it's gonna be like Twitter, it's 140 characters. But Board of Elections, there's a word count associated with that process.
So, two things.
Sorry.
Keep in mind on the ballot itself. On the ballot itself, the referendum will get a number, just like the marijuana referendum was number 71, and all of the communications about that referendum was that yes or no on 71. So there's a very easy translation to be made for folks who are worried about the length of the description on the ballot. Secondarily, it is the only referendum or initiative on this year's ballot, so it will be the only thing that's not in office. So that should simplify the process for folks who are going to the polls, to know the number. I know there's some of us who are working to try and make it referendum number 51, to make it really easy. But so that's a really simple way when you're talking to folks to remind them that it's the only initiative for referendum, and it's going to have a specific number, which we'll get from the Board of Elections at some point.
Thank you. I like to simplify things. I was a government training officer and training specialist, and this seems to be controversial and complicated. My first question is, are we planning on training all of DC in what the state constitution is? Do we have to tell them first to go online and learn about these things and what the boundaries are and commit to a representative forum? That's 1, 2, 3 questions right there in one. The second one is, it seems to me that it would be Lean Six Sigma simple if you just have one question, and that one question would be, do you want statehood or DC to become the 51st state so you can have representation in Congress, period?
So the
Yes
reason,
or no?
the reason the ballot language is
Pick the
worded
seat,
that
I
way
just
is
got
to
it.
answer
Go
those
sit
4
next
things.
to,
In order to submit a
Karen.
petition to be president in Congress, you need to show that your residents want to become a state, that they approve the Constitution, that they agree to the boundaries, and that they commit to a Republican form of government. In order to show those 4 things, they need to vote on those 4 things. That's why the language is worded with those 4 parts of that one question.
So do you suggest that when we do the training, that we tell everybody just say yes to everything, so we get to the next thing later?
It's,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
there's
All right, so this
there's
is
one
all
box for them to
under-
check, so yeah, it's just explaining to them why you,
Okay.
sure you explain to them why it's in those
Because I'm
4
sure
parts.
nobody's gonna understand.
Well, so it's gonna be very important that you understand, that's why these
Yeah.
trainings are so important. The question that you encounter more than anything, so are there 4 questions?
Yeah.
Do you have to check 4 different boxes? You have to say yes, no, or whatever, you have to make a mix? No, there's one question, and then there are 4 different parts, and it is a yes or no. The answer to the whole question is either yes or no.
Okay.
And it's your goal to urge people to say,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Gene,
good.
Gene, one more.
We're gonna come back around this.
Your position is that there is only one question, but I think you negate the fact that people are literate and they can see that there are 4 questions. And so the person will say, oh, I want to become the 51st state, but I don't want the Constitution that you presented. So what should I do?
There's
Oh,
only
yes.
one yes box to check.
But that's not answer my question. I said, what should they do?
So
Oh,
my
yes.
point was that they're, you were saying if they want to vote, that's a separate question from what they can vote. So I thought you were saying that there were going to be 4 questions. On the actual ballot itself, it will only be 1 question.
Oh, so you're not gonna have, do you wanna be a state? Do you want the
Yeah,
Constitution?
but
Do
you can separate each of those parts by commas instead of separate lines.
Board of Election runs this process. There will be only one opportunity to respond. And your one response,
To one sentence instead of 4.
no, collectively, there will only, you will have
I
only.
understand, but you can make it 1 sentence instead of 4 separate sentences. Just.
The way it appears on the ballot is up to the Board of
Right,
Elections,
okay.
but these 4 parts are the 4 important parts that need to be answered.
Right.
There will only be an opportunity, you will be able to vote yes collectively or no collectively. There will not be an option to vote for each subpart, yes or no.
Okay, so in training, where it says November ballot, we should have DC Statehood will be on the November ballot. Voters will answer 1 question for 4 parts.
Yes,
And not a question with 4 parts. 1 question for 4 parts. So if that's in your training, then people can understand. 1 question for 4 parts.
Where are you looking at one
On the
big question?
November ballot, and then we
Which-
have
on
a
which-
page 6.
On the,
In this material, and that's why this training and this interaction is so important, because, you know, we're trying to make sure that we all are clear on what it is we want. And for most of the room, we want statehood, and when we want it now. So it's up to us to convince and convey our energy, share our stories, and to be clear in some of the material that we have here. And we're gonna go around here, we're just gonna go around this way.
So
Yes.
to your question of what about cases where someone really wants to be a state but has some problems with the Constitution or doesn't like the name? How would you suggest engaging those people on, okay, I have these grievances with the process to date. Will there be an opportunity to revise or revisit some of these questions? Or if I vote yes, is that an absolute yes, final answer on everything?
well, you can ask them what their issues are with the Constitution. Well,
The only chance we have to self-govern is to give us self-governance. So if people are worried about any of the pieces of the Constitution, the name, the mascot, I don't care what it is, we have to get 535 people out of our business. They should vote yes on statehood and work to change those positions.
And kind of a clear analogy is, you know, there is a campaign for president going on right now. I don't know if you guys heard about it. Now, if you look at the popularity numbers, no, don't look at that. Look at the unpopularity numbers. There are people saying, well, I don't know, I don't like this person. But at the end of the day, are you going to stay out of a process? Are you going to stay home? Or are you going to weigh in and you're going to make a decision based on your self-interest and your future? I think there are a lot of, yes, there will be some people who stay home, but I believe that there are going to be a majority of the people who come out will say, I've got to make a decision and I'm going to make it. So people in Washington, D.C. have a decision. It's up to you to help them make the right decision. Not leaving it blank. Now, there will be some challenges, as Ms. Paul said, and as people, and as someone said, that people are literate and they're going to read through things, but there will be material out there to help people. Once the ballot language is finalized, the Board of Election and Ethics will do a voter's guide. The League of Women Voters generally has done a voter's guide. There will be other tools out there to help people and simplify. It won't be, I think, as the campaigns develop around this, the language might be just vote yes to statehood or something like that, to make it simple to people. Something like that. I think we can all agree that the language needs to be simplified so folks understand and they start shaking their head. And it's not, 4 parts or 10 parts or whatever. It's an action on this piece of legislation.
I'm going to get you to say, I want to follow up on that and say, I think the difference is this training for you guys to get out and speak. The message you're giving is, vote yes for statehood. We want you to understand the specifics so that when people come back and have those specific questions, some people might say, okay, great, I take the simple message, I support statehood, I'm going to vote yes. Lots of people will have questions. So that's why we want to get into the specifics of all of this to make sure you understand it, so that hopefully the easy message is working, but sometimes you need to get down into the more specifics.
The language needs to change, because he had a valid point. If we don't approve of the Constitution, the state Constitution as it is, and we're teaching them this, and also we don't agree to the boundaries, these things need to be taught, but the whole city is not gonna learn that before it's time to vote.
Well, we're gonna make it after that.
Okay.
And it's a little bit more complex, because we haven't seen, I don't know, in my lifetime, have we seen a question with 4 parts, Washington DC? I don't know. So we realize that there's a challenge there. We realize the timing, it's already August. We've got a couple of months. But the city will wake up in September quickly. We know Washington DC is always sleepy in August. Civic associations and advisory neighborhood commissioners do not meet. But I think that what it's gonna take is gonna take people power. It's gonna take a movement. I think the good news is from folk who are paying attention is if you look at even at the presidential candidates and where they have been through the process, here in Washington DC, Hillary Rodham Clinton has said that she supports it. Bernie Sanders has said he supports it. The Libertarian candidate says that they support it. So a majority of candidates have come out in support of this, and we're hoping that their teams will act on this to move their people as well. We're gonna run around, I think it was Eleanor, Ron, and then Julie.
I want to just make one statement, and then I have 2 questions about the, about information that'll be available to us. I think the Constitution does have some flaws. I believe it does have some flaws, but I would much rather live under that Constitution than what we have now. And I think it's better for everybody, and when people complain about the Constitution, just remind them that it's better than our current situation. Is there a map on the website that we can hand to people? I think handing that map to people will be a huge help.
There is a map on the website. We can actually even get up a less complicated version of the map on the website.
I think that will be a huge
And it will
help.
be in the back when we get the new Constitution printed. It will be in the back of the new Constitution as well.
I'm not sure a lot of people are going to read the whole Constitution, but
It's going to be pocket size, so it's hopefully, I still make sure people read it, but at the very
Yeah.
least, if you have one, you can show people the map there as you're talking to people. That was more my point. Certainly
But
don't
we
expect-
need a 1-page summary like the Library of Congress has done for the new Columbia Admission Act. I've done a fair amount of lobbying, and that has just proved so helpful to have that 1-page summary of the new Columbia Admission Act. So if we could have a 1-page summary of the Constitution, that would be great.
I'm just going to make a couple of recommendations. First, for the ballot question, the language that we approved at the council should be the language that's on here. It should be the same language because they keep it consistent. That's the draft that's been submitted to the Board of Elections and Ethics.
You're talking about on
So the actual language that you have on page 6 should be the actual language that we in the council approved.
They haven't finished.
I
No,
think, Ron, just like Board of Election Ethics, it was our goal to keep it a little bit more simple, because sometimes with the council, the language is provides for a little bit more flourish and for legal folk. So.
Yeah, but that's what people are going to see.